Chapter 19. The Child at the Brookside. Thou wilt love her dearly, repeated Hester Prynne, as she and the minister sat watching little Pearl. Dost thou not thinking her beautiful? And see with what natural skill she has made those simple flowers around her. How she gathered pearls and diamonds and rubies in the wood. They could not have become her better. She is a splendid child, but I know whose brown she has. Those to know history, said Arthur Disney with an uncreative smile, that this dear child tripping about always at their side had caused me many an alarm. Meltdown. All history what a thought is that, and how terrible to dread it. That my own features were partly repairing her face, and so strangely that the world might see them, but she is mostly thin. No, no, not small, mostly, answered the mother with a tender smile. A little longer, and to nurse not to be afraid to trace whose child she is. But how strangely beautiful she looks, with those wild flowers in her hair. It is as if one of the fairies, whom he left in our dear old England, had beckoned her out to meet us. It was with a feeling which neither of them had ever before experienced, that they sat and watched Pierre's slow advance, invisible detail that ere then had been offered to the world. These 7 years passed as the living hieroglyphic in which was revealed the secret they so darkly sought to hide. All writing in this symbol, all plainly manifest. Had there been a prophet or magician skilled to read this character's flame, and Pearl was the oneness of their being, be the foregone evil what it might. How could they doubt that their early lives and future destinies were conjoined, when they beheld at once the material union and the spiritual idea in one they met, and were to do immortal together? Thoughts like this, and perhaps other thoughts, which they did not acknowledge or define, flew in a way about the child as she came onward. Let her see nothing strange, no passion, no illness, entire way of accosting her, whispered Hester. Our Pearl is a fitful and fantastic little elf, sometimes. Especially she is seldom tolerant of emotion when she does not fully comprehend the why and wherefore. But the child has a strong affection. She loves me and will love thee. "Thou canst not think," said the minister, glancing aside the Hester Prynne, "how my heart dreads this interview and yearns for it. But, in truth, as already told thee, children are not really wont to be familiar with me. They will not climb my knee, nor babble in my ear, nor answer to my smile, but stand apart and eye me strangely, even little babes, when I take them in my arms, weep bitterly. Yet Pearl, twice in her little lifetime, had been kind to me. The first time, to now, is it well. The last was when thou left her with thee to the house of yonder stern old governor. "And thou didst plead so bravely in her behalf and mine," answered the mother. "I remember it, and so shall little Pearl. Fear nothing. She may be strange and shy at first, but will soon learn to love thee." By this time Pearl had reached the margin of the brook, and stood on the farther side, gazing sadly at Hester and Claremont, who still sat together on the mossy tree trunk, waiting to receive her. Just where she had paused the brook changed to form a pool, so smooth and quiet that it reflected a perfect image of her little figure, with all the brilliant picturesqueness of her beauty, in its allurement of flowers and creative foliage, but more refined and spiritualized than the reality. This image, so nearly identical with the living bird, seemed to communicate some. what of it own, of its own shiny and intangible quality to the child herself. It was strange, the way in which Pearl stood, looking so steadfastly at them throughout the dim median of the forest gloom. Herself, meanwhile, all glorified with a ray of sunshine that was attract thitherward as by a certain sunbeam. In the brook beyond stood another child, another and the same, with likewise its ray of golden light. Esther felt herself in some indistinct and tantalizing manner, strangled from fear, as if the child in her lonely ramble through the forest had strayed out of the sphere in which he and her mother dwelt together, and was now vainly seeking to return to it. There was both, true, and error in the impression. The child and mother were strangled, but thought Hester's fault, not birth. Since the latter rebelled from her side, another inmate had been admitted within the circle of the Mars feelings, is to modify the aspect of the knoll, that Pratt, the returning wanderer, could not find her wanted place, and hardly knew where she was. I have a strange fancy, observed the Centurion Minister, that this brook is the boundary between two worlds, and that thou canst never meet my pearl again. Or is she an elfish spirit who, as the legends of our childhood tell us, is forbidden to cross a running stream? Pray hasten her, for this delay has already imparted a tremor to my nerves. Come, there shall, said Hester, accurately and stretching out both her arms. How slow thou art! When hast thou been so sluggish before now? Here is a friend of mine, who must be thy friend also. Thou wilt have twice as much love henceforward as the mother alone could give thee. Leap across the brook and come to us. Thou canst leap like a young deer. Pearl, without responding in any manner to these honey-sweet expressions, remained on the other side of the brook. Now she fixed her bright, wild eyes on her mother, now on the minister, and now included them both in the same glance, as if to detect and explain to herself the relation which they bore to one another. For some unaccountable reason, as Arthur Dinsmore felt the shark's eye upon himself, his hand, with a gesture so habitual as to have become involuntary, stole over his heart, at length assuming a singular air of authority. Pearl stretched out her hand, with the small forefinger extended, and pointed evidently toward her mother's breast, and vanished in the middle of the brook. There was the flower girdled and sunny image of little Pearl, pointing her small forefinger too. "Thou strange child, why dost thou not come to me?" exclaimed Hester. Pearl still pointed with her forefinger and frowned, gathering her brow the more impressive from the childish, the almost baby-like aspect of the figure that conveyed, as her mother still kept beckoning to her, and arranging her face in a holiday suite of unaccustomed smiles. The child stamped her foot with a yet more imperious-looking gesture. In the brook, again, was the fantastic beauty of the image, with its reflected form, its pointed finger, and imperious gesture, giving emphasis to the aspect of little Pearl. Handsome Pearl! Or I shall be angry with thee, cried his surprise, who however inured to such behaviour on the elf's side apart at other seasons, was naturally anxious for more seemly deferment now. Leap across the brook, naughty child, and run hither, else I must come to thee. But Pearl, not a a whit started at her mother's threats, any more than mollified by her entreaties, now suddenly burst into a fit of passion, gesticulating violently, and throwing her small figure into the most extravagant contortions. She accompanied this wild outbreak with piercing shrieks, shrieks which the goods reverend and reverberated on all sides, so that alone as she was in her childish an unreasonable wrath it seemed as if a hidden multitude were lending her their sympathy and encouragement. Seen in the brook once more was the shining grass of Pearl's image, crying girdled with flowers, but stamping its foot, while lying gesticulating, and in the midst of all, still pointing at its small forefinger at Hester's bosom. "I see what ails the child," whispered Hester to the clergyman, and turning pale in spite of a strong effort to conceal her trouble and annoyance. Children will not evade any the slightest change in the accustomed aspect of things that are daily before their eyes. Pearl misses something which she has always seen me wear. "I pray you," answered the minister, "if thou hast any means of pacifying the child, do it forthwith, save it were the cankered wrath of an old witch like Mistress Higgins," added he, attempting to smile. "I know nothing that I would not sooner encounter than displeasure in a child. In Persian young beauty, as in the wrinkled wit, it has a preternatural effect. Passive her, if thou lovest me." Esther turned again towards Pearl with a crimson blush upon her cheek, a conscious glance aside of the clergyman, and then a heavy sigh, while, even before she had time to speak, the blush yielded to a deadly pallor. "Pearl," said she sadly, "look down at thy feet." "¿Qué?" "Pearl," said she, sadly, "look down at thy feet, there, before thee, on the higher side of the brook." The child turned her eyes to the point indicated, and there lay the scarlet letter, so close upon the margin of the stream, that the golden border was reflected in it. "Bring it hither," said Hester. "Come thou and take it up," answered Pearl. "Was ever such a child?" observed Hester aside to the minister. "Oh, I have much to tell thee about her, but in very truth she is right as regards this hateful token. It must bear its tortures yet a little longer, only a few days longer, until we shall have left this region, and look back hither as to a land which we have dreamed of. The forest cannot hide it, the mighty ocean shall take it from my hand, and swallow it up forever." With these words she advanced to the margin of the brook, took up the scarlet letter, and fastening it again into her bosom, although but a moment ago, as Hester had spoken of drowning it in the deep sea, there was a sense of ineffable doom upon her, as she thus received by this daily symbol from the hand of fate. She had flown into infinite space, she had drawn an hour's free breath, and here again was scarlet misery, glittering on the old spot. So it ever is, whether thus typified or not, that an evil deed invests itself with the character of doom. Hester next gathered up the heavy tresses of her hair, and confined them beneath her cap, as if there were a withering spell in the sad letter. Her beauty, the warmth and riches of her womanhood, departed like fading sunshine, and a great shadow seemed to fall across her. When the ready change was wrung, she extended her hand to Pearl. "Dost thou know thy mother now, child?" asked she, reproachfully, but with a solid tone. "Why to come across the brook, and own thy mother, now that she has her chain upon her, now that she is sad?" "Yes, now I will," answered the child, bounding across the brook, and clasping Hester in her arms. "Now thou art my mother indeed, and thy little Pearl." In a mood of tenderness that was not usual with her, she drew down her mother's head, and kissed her brow and both her cheeks. But then, by a kind of necessity that always impelled the child to allow whatever comfort she might chance to give with a throb of anguish, Pearl put up her mouth and kissed Scarlet Letter too. "That was not kind," said Hester. "When thou hast shown me a little love, thou mockest me. "Why doth the minister sit yonder?" asked Pearl. "He waits to welcome thee," replied her mother. "Counsel, and entreat his blessing. He loves thee, my lord Pearl, and loves thy mother too. Wilt thou not love him? Come, he longs to greet thee." "Though he loves us," said Pearl, looking up with acute intelligence into her mother's face, "will he go back with us, hand in hand, we three together into the town?" "Not now, dear child," answered Hester, "but in days to come he will walk hand in hand with us. We'll have a home and forest of our own, and thou shalt sit upon his knee, and he will teach thee many things, and love thee dearly. Thou wilt love him, wilt thou not?" "Why he always keep his hands over his heart?" inquired Per. "Foolish child, what a question is that!" exclaimed her mother. "Come and ask his blessing." But whether influenced by the jealousy that seems instinctive with every parent child towards a dangerous rival, or from whatever caprice of her freakish nature, Pearl was shown no favour to the clergyman. It was only by an exertion of force that her mother brought her up to him, hanging back, and manifesting her reluctance by a grimace, of which, ever since her babyhood, she had possessed a singular variety, and could transform her mobile physiognomy into a series of different aspects, with a new mischief in them each and all. The minister, painfully embarrassed, but hoping that a kiss might prove a talisman to admit him into the child's kindlier regards, bent forward and impressed one on her brow. Hereupon Pearl broke away from her mother, and running to the brook, stooped over it, and bathed her forehead, until the unwelcome kiss was quite washed off, and diffused throughout a long lapse of the gliding water. She then remained apart, silently watching Hester and the clergyman, while they talked together, and made such arrangements as were suggested by their new position, and the purposes soon to be fulfilled. And now this frightful interview had come to a close. The dell was to be left a solitude among its dark old trees, which with their multitudinous tongues would whisper long of what had passed there, and no mortal be the wiser, and the melancholy brook would add this other tale to the mystery with which its little heart was already overwhelmed, and whereof it still kept up a murmuring battle, with more cheerfulness of tone than for ages heretofore.